Rumors are circulating, whispers are growing louder, and fans are now in complete disbelief as word spreads that Mendeecees may have just dropped a bombshell that no one saw coming, according to behind-the-scenes chatter and a few eyebrow-raising posts. The love and hip-hop universe has been rocked to its core once more, and this time it's not just a messy fight or another on-camera meltdown, it's something much deeper. The identity of this woman is still unknown, but we do know that tensions have been building for weeks, and now it appears that everything is coming to light. NBC has reportedly come forward with allegations that Kirk Frost, yes, Rasheeda's husband, has been having a covert affair with another Love and Hip Hop cast member. Fans are shocked. Is it only drama for the cameras, or has Kirk truly crossed a line that might end everything? Rasheeda is apparently taken by surprise, and the Love and Hip Hop production staff is rushing to conduct damage control before things worsen. Join us as we dissect what actually transpired, what Mendeecees are saying, and how the entire cast is responding to this shocking disclosure. It wasn't until Mendeecees showed up at the most recent taping, unusually quiet and visibly irritated, that things really started to take a turn. He hardly greeted anyone, kept his phone in his hand, and appeared to be scrolling through something with an expression that shifted from disbelief to fury. Everyone noticed it, but no one dared to ask. Not yet. The atmosphere around the Love and Hip Hop set had been tense for days, but no one really understood why people whispered between takes, side eyes were exchanged, and something didn't feel right. Yandi attempted to pull him aside backstage and asked him what was wrong, but all he could do was reply in a low voice that it was dangerous rather than serious. Within hours, the buzz started to get louder, and there were rumors that Mendeecees had found something that might destroy not one, but several relationships. When the main cast gathered for a production dinner hosted by the network, the tension was already boiling over. The atmosphere was supposed to be celebratory, with new seasons and storylines, but all anyone could sense was the undercurrent of something heavy about to explode. By evening, that buzz turned into a storm, and word spread that he was planning to confront Kirk Frost in front of everyone, not just about money or business, but about an alleged affair that could flip the entire plot of the show. The men arrived late and had an expression that made small talk unnecessary. As the men approached the table, silence fell. Yandandi nervously followed him, trying to predict what might happen. He stood over Kirk, who finally looked up and smirked like he wasn't impressed, asking, "What's good, man?" Kirk and Rasheeda were already seated at the far end of the room, laughing and talking to producers, unaware of the storm that was approaching them. Leaning back in his chair, Kirk remarked nonchalantly, "But Mendeecees wasn't in the mood for small talk." Mendeecees stated bluntly, "You tell me. Or, do you want me to take down the messages now?" As soon as the room froze and several phones started recording from beneath the table, Rasheeda's smile vanished, and Kirk's body tensed up. "What messages?" "Don't play dumb," Men said, taking out his phone and tapping it many times. "I wasn't even looking for it, man. Someone sent it to me. If it's fake, you can tell me right here and now." Kirk inquired, trying to sound calm, but a flash of panic crossed his face. Rasheeda reached for the phone, but Mendeecees pulled it back, saying, "I'm not trying to cause a scene, even though the scene had already been made. But you're out here disrespecting your wife and embarrassing the rest of us by association." He turned the phone to show Kirk, and the screen displayed a series of flirty, suggestive, and unmistakably personal texts. The name saved at the top was that of a well-known female cast member, and Kirk's number matched. The timestamps were recent, and the tone was far beyond friendly. Gusts reverberated throughout the table. Kirk slowly got up. "You really believe this? You think I'd be stupid enough to text like that knowing how much attention we all get?" Then DC retaliated. "Instead of attempting to deny it, perhaps ask who sent it to me because they claim it has been going on for a minute. You're asking the wrong questions. You're claiming that my husband has been having an affair with another cast member, and you waited until now to reveal something I didn't want to believe because Rasheeda pulled her chair back." The producer frantically tried to calm everyone down, but the damage was done. Kirk left the room without saying anything else, and Rasheeda trailed closely behind, obviously holding back her tears. Yandandi remained by Mendeecees, shaking her head and whispering, "Baby, are you sure this was the right way to handle it?" After giving her a glance, he declared, I don't care anymore about too much of this fake brotherhood. If he's doing dirt, I'm not covering it up. By the next morning, social media was in a frenzy as someone leaked a blurry video of the altercation, and fans were taking sides. The rest of the cast was speculating about who the mystery woman was. Was it someone who was filming with them, or someone from a previous season who still had ties to the group? Names began to be thrown around subtly, some believable, some outrageous. But no one could deny the energy had changed. Mendeecees was clout chasing, according to some who supported Kirk, while others commended him for being the only one with the courage to reveal the truth. Hashtags like Dr. Perk exposed and Mendeecees leaks began to trend. Rasheeda said nothing on the internet, no cryptic posts or statements. Complete radio silence, which only served to fuel the flames, prompted more fans to believe the worst. Some insiders said she had packed her bags and left the marital residence, while others said she was pressuring Kurt to go live and give an explanation, but Kurt had also disappeared. No stories, no posts, no interviews. Mendeecees was the sole speaker, and even he just posted a tale with the phrase, "Some truths don't need captions." The fact that the accused woman had not said a single word, not even to deny it, spoke volumes to the fans who already believed she was guilty. The comments on her posts were harsh, with some calling her a homewrecker and others demanding she give her side. However, she remained largely unfazed, or perhaps just afraid of making matters worse. The following day, production called an emergency cast meeting to deal with the fallout, and tensions were at an all-time high. Kirk arrived wearing sunglasses and hardly looked at anyone, while Rasheeda arrived separately, dressed in all black and wearing a stoic expression. Before they sat down, one of the producers addressed the elephant in the room. If these allegations are true, it affects the integrity of everything we're doing, and if they're not, then we need to know what really happened before it spirals out of control. The DCs arrived with Yandandi's arm wrapped around her waist protectively, and everyone else was only there to watch the aftermath. Men, when Kirk finally responded, it was adorable, but you still haven't revealed who sent it. You're blowing my life up with half the tale, men. DC sat up straight. I said what I said. I received the messages. I won't apologize for not keeping quiet. You truly want to do it here, okay? VC's eyes met his. Someone on the team sent the texts, stating that this wasn't the first time the room had gone silent. Jaws dropped if a crew member was involved, which indicated that this went deeper than anyone had initially believed. It was not just a cheating scandal, rather, it was a whole web of deceit. The producers were clearly alarmed because they hadn't expected this degree of publicity, and the meeting quickly descended into chaos as Rasheeda vanished into the hallway. Kirk remained still as he watched her leave without saying a word. It struck him more forcefully than any yelling match could have. The silence was even worse. It was icy, final, and profound. The cast whispered to one another, and the crew frantically followed Rasheeda while keeping their eyes on Kirk's next move. Mendeecees leaned in closer to him and muttered, "Do you really think Kirk's done for?" DC stayed close to the center of the room, arms folded, jaw clenched, knowing full well that what he had done wasn't anything minor and that he had definitely stirred the pot. But he felt it was for a reason. Men didn't respond right away. Instead, he observed the sequence play out like a man who has seen it too many times before, muttering, "When lies catch up, they don't knock. They kick the damn door in." As Tasha stood with her arms crossed and defiant, Kirk began to pace and run a hand over his face. It seemed as though she had been waiting for this day for the truth to finally come out, which had been bottled up inside her for far too long. One of the producers cautiously approached Kirk and suggested that he take a break, but Kirk waved him off, saying, "No, if we're airing it all out, let's get it done." His voice was shaky, but his confidence was ebbing, and then Scrappy appeared, on the set without warning. He hadn't been scheduled to shoot this scene, but word had spread quickly. "Yo, what the hell is going on here?" he asked, his eyes bouncing between Kirk. He was not one to overlook drama, especially when it affected his crew, so Tasha and Mendeecees must have received a communication from someone behind the scenes. With a quieter voice, Scrappy approached Kirk and said, "Bro, you really got caught out like this." Kirk gave him an almost imploring look and said, "It's not what it looks like." "It never is until it is," said Scrappy, grinning incredulously as he shook his head. Backstage, Rasheeda was sitting alone with her eyes swollen and her heart racing. She hadn't even turned off her microphone, so the producers were still recording everything she whispered to herself. I knew something felt wrong, but I kept ignoring it, saying, maybe it's just stress, maybe it's just life. The tension was so intense that you could feel it in your bones, and even the camera guys looked uncomfortable. But they kept rolling because they knew that this was gold fans would devour. But it was he who was lying. Since word always spreads, more quickly than the cameras can turn off, fans were responding in real time to the speculations on social media, as her phone buzzed regularly, and notifications began to come in. Perk exposure was already trending back on set. I came here because for once I wanted to be real. I've been the side chick in silence, and I'm tired of men getting away with it while women get called every name in the book, she said, addressing the entire room. Some cast members nodded silently, while others looked down. Everyone had a version of this story, and everyone had their own ghosts. But right now, Tasha's was the main attraction. The Mendeecees looked at her with a mixture of respect and unease. You didn't have to come forward, he said. But you did. Just know this is going to change everything. Pass aside, maybe it needs to be. Kirk stepped forward again, his voice low and cracking. You had your moment, you made your point, and now can we just move on? But no one was ready to move on. Not when the pieces were still falling. Not when the damage hadn't even been measured yet. This is bigger than just an affair. This is years of fake smiles, fake loyalty, and cameras capturing what people thought they buried. Andy looked around the room and muttered to herself, "This feels too real." She was correct. What had begun as a confrontation was devolving into a full-blown breakdown of relationships of trust of the image love and hip-hop tried so hard to sell. And he wasn't incorrect, since this was one of the occasions when even carefully planned reality programs may veer off course and reveal the dirty, unvarnished truth. When Kirk finally sat down, his energy was depleted for the first time. He didn't appear like the flamboyant businessman or the loud voice in the room, but rather like a man who realized that his world was falling apart and that there might not be a way to save it. I understand, but you're positive this was the right choice, men. Scrappy attempted to defuse the situation by shifting the topic, but it didn't work because the scandal's weight was too great. VCs gave him a very serious look. How long do we tolerate people abusing others just because they appear on television? Someone needs to hold him responsible. I hope it doesn't cost more than it's worth. Scrappy nodded slowly, and just when folks thought things would calm down, another shockwave struck. Everyone paused as one of the producers declared that Rasheeda wanted to return to the set to make a public statement. Kirk's eyes widened as he looked up, and he asked, "What the hell is she going to say?" Mendy and Yandi looked at each other, and I suppose we're going to find out. Yandandi said in a whisper full of tension. The crew rushed to set up lights again and adjust the audio because sometimes the best scenes never are. When Rasheeda finally returned to the set, her face was calm but unreadable. It was the kind of calm that comes after a storm, the eye of the hurricane, just before everything goes quiet or explodes all over again. That's exactly where we'll pick up in part 3, because what Rasheeda says next will shake you to your core. Kirk stood slowly, uncertain whether to approach her or remain put, his hands twitching at his sides as he walked with the kind of quiet strength that only comes from deep pain. The kind that doesn't scream or cry, but instead stares straight through you. Everyone turned to her, and there wasn't a whisper among the cast or crew. Wanted to make a change but realized it might be too late. Rasheeda's heels clicked against the ground with each step, sounding like a warning, but she stopped directly in front of the cameras and turned to face Mendez. "You said you were being real," she said in a low but clear voice, but he didn't immediately answer. He looked at her, trying to figure out where she was going. "I never meant to hurt you," he said slowly, "but people should know who they're dealing with." Rasheeda nodded as if she expected that response, and I should not be humiliated on camera for something I wasn't even permitted to prepare for. "You kissed me while we were rebuilding and assured me that everything was behind us, but all the while you continued to sneak around with members of this cast." Kirk opened his lips to speak, but he remained silent and stared at her as if he were a man caught in the headlights of his own demise. "I've endured a lot for love of family and the brand, But this is a line that's been crossed. So let me be clear that I didn't come back here to cry. Rather, I came to make sure you'll see the truth from my mouth, not just his or hers or anyone else's. Rasheeda turned to the cameras and spoke not only to the room, but to the world outside the lens. Everyone was terrified to even breathe too loudly, so the room remained hushed. Kirk glanced to the floor as if it contained answers he couldn't find, in his wife's eyes, and then Bambi purposefully walked in, saying, "Yo, I just got the messages," while brandishing her phone. Twitter is exploding. People believe that you are all pretending to be powerful. Turning to face her, Rasheeda asked, icily, "Do I appear like I'm playing?" Bambi took a step back right away. "No, sis, not you. I know it is real. I was just stating that people outside were already making judgments, and that they were untidy men." BCs took a deep breath, stepped forward once more, and then let them speak because this isn't about power. It's about responsibility. Scrappy. Tried to mediate, and I understand that, but this is some really awkward timing. We all have things going on, and this is what people will remember from the season. Perhaps that's not a thing. Perhaps this season doesn't have to be about parties and made-up plots. Perhaps now is the time for people to notice the flaws. When one of the assistant producers whispered something into the ear of another crew member, a camera swung slightly to the right, revealing Tasha standing just off set. She hadn't left, and she had been watching everything unfold in silence. Rasheeda's lip quivered slightly, but she held her ground. "I didn't ask for this plot. I asked for peace." "You might have told me," Rasheeda remarked softly as she approached. Her woman. Rasheeda stared at her for a long time before whispering, "You meant for me to never find out at all." Tasha's voice broke. "I tried, but I wasn't strong enough. I was involved in the destruction, but tears were welling up in her eyes." She then turned and proceeded back toward the middle of the group of set males. As she went by, DC moved aside to give her space, but his expression revealed a deeper sense of regret, possibly even guilt, for the way the truth had come to light. Kirk drew a trembling breath and eventually found his voice. "Rasheeda, I apologize. I honestly believed that I could make things right and that our relationship was done. It was supposed to be an error." I left Rasheeda behind, and her voice set him on fire. "You can't claim that it was an error now. When you make a mistake like spilling a glass, you keep making the same choice. And now that the camera has caught you, you want to discuss how to correct it." Kirk started to speak again, but Rasha interrupted him with a raised hand. Don't," she said, backing away and taking a big breath. "I need time and space, and maybe for once I need to stop being the one who fixes everything while you break it." The word's weight echoed through the room like thunder. Kirk nodded gradually, beaten and without any further protection. Yandi approached Rasheeda and put a kind hand on her shoulder. "Whatever you need, we got you," she said quietly. Rasheeda nodded gratefully, her eyes moist but firm. "Thank you," she muttered as the camera panned around the room once more, capturing the reactions of the crew members standing motionless like witnesses at a trial, Bambi wiping her eyes, and then another twist. Mona Scotty Young herself entered the set. Producers hardly ever entered the frame but were too big to ignore. Mona looked around her face gravely, saying that wasn't in the script, but sometimes real stories must be told, even if it hurts. She turned to Kirk. "We'll discuss it later, but for now we're taking a break." Everyone cleared the set, and as others began packing and going away, Rasheeda stayed motionless, saying, "Men in DCs approached in silence." He repeated, "I never wanted it to come out like this." And Rasheeda gave a small nod without looking at him. "But it did, and now we have to live with it." It ended when she left with a confident demeanor, not waiting for anyone to follow. Broken couple, a split cast, and a show that felt more real than ever before weren't even close because, as the dust settled, a new layer of drama began to develop behind closed doors. Off-camera conversations would take place, alliances would change, and some secrets remained unspoken. Part 4 begins right in the middle of this aftermath, where loyalty is put to the test, careers are at stake, and someone else comes forward with the revelation that completely upends everything. The set was quiet, but the storm had already started behind the scenes, and the tension was still there. Cast members' phones were constantly buzzing, messages were being sent back and forth, and the production staff was frantically trying to decide how to deal with the aftermath as the reports were spreading more quickly than they could control. Blogs were already posting headlines about Kirk's alleged affair and Rasheeda's explosive reaction, and even though Mona had temporarily halted filming, the drama had taken on a life of its own. Rasheeda sat by herself in her dressing room, staring at the floor with her hands folded tightly in her lap, knuckles white, trying to hold everything together. She had built so much with Kirk, rebuilding after past betrayals and creating a brand that fans loved and respected, and now it felt like everything was falling apart in front of her. And with a few words from Men and a silent nod from Tasha, it felt like everything was falling apart in front of her. She didn't cry anymore. Instead, the door opened slowly and Yandi entered. She didn't answer the door, but Yandi stepped in, keeping a gentle expression on her face as if she knew that one wrong word could break Rasheeda again. "I brought you some tea," she said, setting the cup on the table. "You okay, Rasheeda?" she said, not looking up. "I know it isn't what you signed up for," she added, and Andy sat down next to her. "You handled that with more strength than any of us could have imagined." Rasheeda eventually turned to her. "It's not just the infidelity. It's also the betrayal, the lying, the acting, as though I was crazy for asking questions. And the worst part is that I endured it all because I believed that perhaps he had finally changed." Andy sighed and nodded, saying that sometimes we love someone so much that we forget to protect ourselves. They sat in silence for a while. Kirk was pacing scrappily in another area of the building, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, and saying, "Bro, you messed up, and not just a little. This is career-ending kind of messy." Meanwhile, the tea was still steaming between them. Scrappy shook his head. "You didn't know or you didn't care, there's a difference." Kirk scratched his face in frustration. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I thought it was done over." As the next twist unfolded, Kirk looked away, unable to respond, but drama doesn't wait for the right lighting. Breathlessly, she handed the tablet to Mendez, who had just left his room, and the screen showed a new post from Tasha, who had gone live on social media to give her side of the story. Her words, "I never planned to speak," she said, staring directly into the camera. "But now that the truth's out, I need people to know Kirk wasn't the only one involved. I wasn't the only cast member he was talking to." Tasha wasn't finished. There was another woman, and I kept her secret because she begged me to, but now I'm done being loyal to people who never defended me back in the hallway. The live chat burst right away, with followers guessing, demanding names, and making allegations. Kirk murmured, "She's lying," and his face turned pale. "Are you sure about that?" DC asked, staring at him. Scrappy backed away and shook his head, saying, "This just went from bad to nuclear." Kirk's silence said it all. Yandandi hurried into the corridor with foam in hand. "Did you all see what she said?" The producers were in disarray since it wasn't just one incident anymore. It had escalated into a full-fledged controversy that threatened to embarrass the entire cast. They were already filming it for YouTube. When Rasheeda eventually came out of her dressing room, she was holding foam in her hand and reading over the comments that were pouring in on her page. Fans were asking her questions and offering her support, but they were also asking who the second woman was. Kirk. The updated Stevie J Rasheeda is worthy of better. She approached Kirk directly, who appeared to be about to swoon. "You assured me it was just Tasha." But Kirk stammered as she added, "Who else, Kirk? Do I need to find out about on my own?" "I didn't intend for this to occur." Rasheeda's jaw tensed. "When we talked about trying again, so you lied once again. You didn't come clean even after everything was revealed, and as the cameras were being wheeled back out, the producers realized they couldn't spend any more time because the show was now scripting itself." Mona turned off the headset and watched the mayhem play out with a look of both horror and admiration. "Let them roll," she said to the camera team. "This is reality." As the camera lights flashed on Rasheeda turning toward the team, the situation suddenly shifted to real tears, real wrath, and real repercussions. "I want every moment to be captured on camera because this is my closure and perhaps my freedom." Kirk attempted to grab her hand, but she resisted, saying, Don't touch me. Not right now. Maybe not ever. She left the set once more, but this time she was proud of herself and not a broken woman as she was taking back her tail. Stunned, Bambi said in a whisper, "You think she's really done this time?" Yandi and Bambi stepped apart. After a long nod, Yandi said, "I think she's finally had enough." The cast was unsure of what would happen next, and the silence was so loud that even Mendeecees, who had initiated this series of events, appeared shaken. Then, in a sudden turn of events, Tasha revealed the identity of the other woman. The producers. Later bleeped out the name, but at that moment, the cast knew exactly who she was referring to, meaning that even more relationships were about to fall apart. Mom intervened once more, this time calling a real halt, saying, "That's enough. This is legal now. We can't air anything else until we clear this. You all need to get your stories straight." However, it was too late. The truth, or at least a version of it, was already out in the world, and the damage was done. Rasheeda vanished into the night, escorted by security, and refused to speak to anyone else. Kirk sat on the edge of a prop couch, staring into spacemen, while BC stood by himself near the monitors, realizing the chain reaction he had started. Yandandi turned to the crew and said quietly, "This season is going to change everything." But even as the camera stopped rolling again, the drama didn't. Threats of lawsuits were whispered between representatives and fans, and they were already pleading for the reunion episode, where everyone would be forced to face each other in public under lights with receipts. That's where the story pauses. But it doesn't end because in this world, no betrayal stays buried forever, and no one leaves without scars. What just took place? It was real, dirty, primal, and beyond reality. We saw betrayal and love clash head-on. In real time, secrets exploded. In front of our eyes, lives were flipped upside down, but Kirk and Rasheeda aren't the only ones involved anymore. Everyone is at risk. Those exposed, those impacted, and those involved. The key question today is, what will happen next? Does Rasheeda ultimately decide to leave, for good? Will Kirk struggle to regain her, or will he let everything fall through the cracks? What about Tasha's startling laugh? Was it the end of her or the beginning of something much more significant? The second woman she exposed was who? What is the true depth of this twisted web of lies? Supporters are already picking sides, but what is the reality? It's still coming apart. Not to be overlooked is Mendeecees. Did he reveal the truth, or was he merely stirring things up to gain influence? Was he always playing his own game, or was he attempting to assist Rasheeda? The situation is getting out of hand. There's no doubt that the upcoming chapter will be much more outrageous. Don't leave if you've been hooked since the beginning. If you believe Rasheeda deserves better, click the like button. What side are you on? Leave a comment. Additionally, be sure to subscribe and enable notifications because you'll want to be here with us when the truth comes out is only the beginning. It's not the end.